G'day folks, welcome to an EcoFarmer's Discovery, the audiobook companion podcast. Join Ewan Campbell as he takes a deep dive into his book, uncovering all the secrets of soil health, biology, and true farm independence. You can listen along to his book on Spotify or download from Audible, and then catch us here as we deep dive into the events of each chapter. We're now up to Chapter 7. Here we go. All right, Ewan, Chapter 7, going to the source. You went to Brookside Laboratories. How'd you find out about them?
Well, that was a crazy thing. It was actually Peter Ray who was working for Whelan's Ground Spread at the time, and we were looking at how we were going to spread product on the farm and what we could do. And he had picked up that I was a bit more keen on knowing this stuff than most people, and he asked somebody whether it was all right to come along to this training course, and they said, yeah, bring them along. And it was at Fantail Lodge in Katikati, and I went down there and I was just like pig and shit. It was great. And it was interesting straight away though, like my learning and inquiry had already bypassed a whole lot of people that were working already in amongst those sorts of things. Yeah. So it was a great way to get really, really involved, and yeah, the people that I met, John Perham and that, then facilitated the ability for me to get decent soil tests and do all sorts of crazy testing that could show or sort of define some of the things I was seeing on the farm. And that was the critical thing. It's like, as we've said in the earlier chapters, oh, but this piece of ground grew 50% more. Yeah, so what? Who cares?
No one cared.
No one cares. Well, I do, because that's our farm and I'm the one responsible for it. And this gave me an opportunity to find out.
So how far do you go to get to Brookside?
Well, Brookside's in Ohio, and basically they run courses and they've got consultants all over the world. So basically what you end up doing is just drying and packing the soils and that to send them off to the States and go over there. So I've been over to the conference 3 times. There's been a couple of events here, and they're there if you need them, basically. And the range of services is really the critical part. And as we've moved into more extensive soil testing, it's been absolutely critical. I mean, the thing is that with us doing a total test and giving an assay of your soil, some of the other labs are just starting to click onto this, but it's been an absolutely, like, without that information, you're down the Googler. It's like having the biggest term deposit bank account of minerals, and you didn't even know you had it.
Wow. So when you were learning these things, what was the biggest aha moment?
Oh, look, there were so many, because I got to ask people, and people that actually knew. And, so, well, how does that get made? Oh, well, that's made of this and that's made of that, and then we use this extraction to get that. Well, why does that work with this? And go, because this type of extraction goes with that. And so it got to be, there's a lot of really technical shit in it. And my simplifier goes, why didn't you say it like this?
Yeah, yeah.
It's really simple. So, when people say, oh, what's this total test? Look, it's just a chemical melt, like a mining assay. It's just telling you how much is in the soil, how much you can utilise it if you can get the soil to function properly. Oh, well, that's simple. Why doesn't anyone else do that? Same thing, the great simplifier.
So did Dr. Albrecht form the basis of Brookside's work, or did they just reference his work?
No, he was he was instrumental with them at the start to set that whole process up. I'm not sure how much, whether it was just a technical instrumental but he laid the foundation about the testing methodologies and the protocols and and that side of it. So, huge part of the whole process.
He wrote, read books and study nature. If they don't agree, throw away the books.
Yeah.
Gee, that's powerful, isn't it?
Well, it is from a scientist.
Yeah.
I've just watched Roots So Deep, which is a compilation of trials in the US on pasture management, and there was, I think, nearly 10 or a dozen scientists involved. What a breath of fresh air to see people that are actually just involved in their own aspects of science, and yet they'd formed a group together to go through and show how a certain method of farming as helping the whole environment, the farmer's profitability, and the whole. And this is where Albrecht came from, because what he did is he would go to places where things grew exceptionally well, and he would test the soil. And then he would bring those information back and go, oh, okay, these soils like this. Now, if I want to grow that plant, I have to modify if I'm going to grow it in a different place. He would learn, well, you'll have to do this, this, this to modify the soil to grow that plant. It's the simplest way in the world to find out how things work. I mean, it's like blueberries, for example. They don't like calcium, but they love magnesium. So he goes and sees where they grow blueberries. I mean, blueberries love silica and they love magnesium. And yet we go through all this, we're going to do all these trials to do this, that, and the other thing, and not just picking on blueberries, instead of actually just going back to the source. And that's why I called the chapter going to the source. It was just like, well, if you want to know how this works, go to where it grows. What's going on with that? Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, well, I was going to ask you, in relation to that quote, if they don't agree, throw away the books, and how did that affect your thinking? But I think you were already there, weren't you? Like, you were already, if the books don't work, I'm not interested. But because you're quite a practical guy. But at the same time, you were reading a lot.
Oh, hugely. I mean, the thing is that when you're reading a lot of material and the books, all of a sudden they'll say something, you go, oh, shit, I've seen that. And I'm going, and you read a bit more and you read a bit more and go, oh, I've seen that. And then it might shoot off in a direction which that doesn't make sense to me, and you might find something else. It was like being at a drafting gate when you're doing sheep. Okay, that makes sense. That doesn't make sense. Where did that come from? And it's I think it's an investigative skill that I've actually really honed quite well, where it's practical, where it's not. And basically, if it's not practical in our farming experience, and if somebody's written it in a book and going, yeah, you do this, this, and this, and going, well, I can't afford to do that. And there's no way on earth we can do that, so we'll throw that one out. But I do like what they're saying about how it might work, so we'll go and find our own way to do it.
Yeah, your own way. You talk about New Zealand's diverse soils. What's the most surprising thing you found?
I can't say there's anything surprising. It's just that New Zealand's an interesting place in the sense that it has a lot of diversity in soils in a very small area. Like, if I go to Waihi, we're in volcanic ash. If I go just south of Waihi, there's a different type of volcanic ash because it comes out of a different hill. Where we farmed up Woodland Road, parts of the farm was absolute garbage and other parts were slightly better. And there was and you got to look at the geology of the country. Like the next door neighbour, Frank Arnold, he had this pinnacle and there was 1 million cubes of blue metal rock, which was perfect for roading. And he thought he'd see if it was viable to open it up as a quarry. So they came along and they drilled down. They wanted to drill down to see how far this blue rock went. Well, this 1 million tons of rock was sitting on the surface. It had landed there.
What? It had landed there?
It had landed there.
Oh, wow.
So, and it was all fragmented, and it's like it was built up the most Meccano jigsaw puzzle, so you could pull it out and make paving stones and all sorts. It was fantastic.
Wow.
So it gives you an idea, there was a lot of shit flying around and, like sometimes on the farm you'd run into these rocks they call them floaters or whatever. They'd be 15 ton. And you can't
just sitting there.
Pew, pew.
Wow.
So, and like if you go further down towards Tauranga, then you get into more of the white clays, and then out at Matakana it's different again, and so that there's that's just in one volcanic area, and we just go a little bit further into Paengaroa, and then we get into the volcanic sands, and then you go into Taupo and how it went boom, and like there's so you go around the country and you can say, they're volcanic soils, but each one of them has a different process and priority. And then you turn right and you go to Taranaki. Well, what came out of that mountain was just completely different to anything else. And I mean, I can see why people went to Taranaki. They're blessed.
Yeah.
What came out of there was just phenomenal.
It's amazing down there.
Yeah.
So is this unique to New Zealand, or is it like this in most geographical
You don't usually
regions
see it so close together.
Right.
Like, that's the phenomenal thing about it. You know, like, if you drive in a short period, you know, you can go, say if I went to Hawke's Bay, I'd go past 10 major volcanic activity events, all with different soils outcomes. Like, if I go to Waikiki Valley, the plateau in Repara, it's one of the most lowest aluminium soils I have seen coming from a volcano. And hence the phosphorus is hugely available. So it's just a case of you've got to do the testing, you've got to understand what you're dealing with, and you've got to have all that information. And that was one thing that I really got the opportunity with Brookside was, cool, I've got somewhere I can actually send the material, ask for all these questions, you know, how does this work, how does this, and they'd send me the results.
Yeah. Do you think that our diversity in the soils is because we're on the rim of fire, a highly earthquake-prone country?
It's got a lot to do with it. I mean, down in Springs Junction in the South Island, inland of Reefton, you know, like, you only have to go up the road. We did a soil sample there, or Sarah did, and it came back with all these fantastic trace elements and everything. But only 15 k's back down the road, it's one of the most devoid of trace elements in the country I've seen. And so he did say, oh, we're on a fault line here. And I go, that's interesting. You know, like, to be that highly mineralised against something 20 k's away was just like, oh, shit, you're chalk and cheese.
Yeah. Sidebar to that, why is New Zealand so poor in selenium?
It's not one of the elements that turned up. You know, like...
With all that diversity, we miss out on selenium.
Yeah.
And yet it's quite important, isn't it?
Well, look, we in a lot of ways, like, if you go to Taranaki, we've got some of the most high copper levels, natural copper levels. But if you go further past, say, go past Tākaka down the South Island, you'll go into some of the lowest copper levels in the soil. And you see this around the country too. So, and that hasn't been attended to. So, like, selenium's one thing, and copper and selenium go together for function. Certain parts of the country got no boron. So they are diverse. The selenium issue is definitely a New Zealand issue. But, I mean, it's not exactly difficult. You only need tiny amounts, and if you keep adding it in, it will build. Absolutely essential in all forms of agriculture too.
You've mentioned that agricultural research or commercial-based research is, how can I put it, biased. Do you think farmers are starting to feel sceptical about that too?
Well, if they're not getting any results and they're not making any money, you'd have to start getting sceptical, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I would have thought. But I don't know, do you think they are, or they're just sort of putting more on?
Some of them can't afford it anymore, so they have to look. And I think it's just getting information out there. I mean, just like doing this, it's just making people aware that there is actually information about why things happen, how they happen, what you're missing. And I just say it's a process of limiting factors. Find the limiting factor. It's not a case about a moron of the same thing. Again, I'm looking for some hairs growing on the palms of my hands. You know, like, it's the definition of sanity, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Like, this morning I was just looking at a soil sample, got all these trace elements, everything, and the numbers tell a story. I said, it's bloody hard, isn't it? You go, yeah, how do you know that? Oh, the capacity up there. And this is going on. Yeah, okay. And so, and your biggest problem is that you've got a really high aluminium content or soluble aluminium content, which has killed all the biology. So without the information, without that aluminium test, and without those other references, you can't actually go, there's your issue. With them, and it's like I'm reading a story from the soil test about how they're farmers.
Yeah, it must be surprising for them to
hear
that read back to them.
Oh, it is.
Like, and you've hardly spent time on the farm. And
I don't have to now.
Yeah.
Like, the tests tell a story. Amazing. I don't often get it wrong. It's like, you got that, and go, how do you know that? And and some to a point where, have you got this growing? Yes.
So why you mentioned you were an oddball at Brookside. Why? What happened?
There was no farmers.
Yeah.
Well, it was just that they have gone to university or trained as soils people, and they're not farmers themselves.
Okay.
And here I am as a farmer, you know, like, just pulling questions out of left, right, and centre.
Yeah.
And basically they said, we just don't have time to do both. And going, well, somehow I found time to do both.
Yeah. Yeah, true. Did that dual perspective help you contribute to the organisation?
I know when I've been there at the conferences that I've had things to say that people have gone, whoa, and they've come and talked to me afterwards and going, what you said there was right on target, but the rest of them weren't ready for it.
Right.
And hence...
Like an insight only a farmer could have if they knew this information.
Yeah. Oh, and the technical side of it, because they're not talking about outside of that protocols.
Right.
I mean, that's the part where you're doing it as a farmer and your experimental block is like if your cows aren't happy or pissed off and you've got all these tests lined up, you go, well, I've got all that right, and yeah, that's a bit low, and we'll supplement them in the meantime, I'll get that sorted. But if that's not working and they're still complaining, there's still something that needs to know about. And this is where I get a great rapport with some of our clients that are similar inclined. They talk to me or ring me up and say, what's going on here? And oh, God, I'm glad you called. I've seen that over at so-and-so. And so you get a reference of 3 or 4 different farms, and then finally go, bang, there it is.
Mm.
And it can be quite obscure. I mean, things like nickel and, the iodine issues and things like that where people are not looking at that.
Yeah. Mm. When you go to these conferences in the US, how global are they? Or do they tend to be sort of Western English-speaking people like ourselves?
The majority of them are US based, and the odd South African, some New Zealanders turn up every now and then, and sometimes out of Britain as well.
But they're cutting edge, right, Brookside?
Well, they were.
Okay.
I mean, the testing methodology and their whole process is excellent.
Yeah.
But just like all organisations, I think probably a little bit tired based on old information and that sort of stuff.
Sure. I guess where I was going with that is, do you see that the English-speaking world as the best farmers?
No.
So if
I don't see any of them as the best farmers.
Really?
Like what I see is dominated agriculture for someone else's use.
Yeah.
Like if I go down the road to Gavin Fisher's place, only 20 k's from here, he's a hell of a good farmer. He doesn't approach it like me in the technical sense, but he's got his feet right in the dirt and he just loves it. And he's just really, really good farmer, and it shows. I mean, on this Root So Deep, they were saying about all these bloody birds that were coming back to the farms and everything. And Gavin's putting up on Facebook pictures of his native falcons.
Wow.
Breeding on the farm.
Wow.
And that's saying something.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
So, coalface thinking, right? You emphasise the importance of practical experience over rigid training. Can you share a problem of a time when being at the coalface helped you solve a tricky problem?
Every day.
Yeah.
Like you can't. It's like Elaine Ingham came to New Zealand to talk about soil biology, right? And so she goes, we need to mix up these compost teas and spray them on the farm 5 times a year. And so you walk outside and how are you going to do that on these hill country, or how are you going to do this stuff here? And you go, okay, I hear what you're saying, but what are the microbes we want? And we're just using compost. And I'm going, yeah, but what went in the compost? Because we've seen that if you put toxic material in the compost and you put it on tomatoes and they will die.
Yeah.
So things flow through. So it's not exactly a simple process. So over time I go, okay, this is specific things that I'm seeing on the farm where specific fungi, the psilocybe, cordyceps and that, going, there is fungal species that I want on the farm. How am I going to deal with this? Now I could go to the compost tea and going, still too much work. How am I going to deal with this? And so you work out how to actually, if I brew them up using fish and I make a dry mix, then I can add them in the brew and spread it on the farm. Problem solved. And it worked way better than anyone else has even dreamt of. So it's a combination of looking at Elaine Ingham's work and looking at Paul Stammett's work, our own practical examples on the farm, and going, how am I going to do this in a cost-effective way?
Yeah.
And then you come up with an answer.
Yeah. Jump to something slightly different. What's the connection between societal health and soil health?
Farmers are in charge of it. Like that's what they don't. What we don't get is that farmers are in charge of society's health.
That's such a weird concept when you hear that for the first time, right? I get it, but wow, that's huge.
Well, if you come to the farm and the animals aren't peak bang on, and you haven't got the right nutrition for the animals, and you haven't got all these things sorted out or on the way to sort it out, whatever eats those products is going to have the same problems as what your animals did and your farm had. So, like if your farm's covered in gorse and prickles, we're going, well, it's low in silica. And the next effect it's going to have in human society is they're going to have hip problems. That's where it goes. Like, that's the first thing that gives out when you got no silica in the body, is your hips go. And how many people are getting hip operations?
Yeah.
So it's brutally honest about this whole process. The farmers are in charge of the health of society. And if we're using all these chemicals to prop up our farm, well, we're a society. They're using all the drugs from the chemical companies, the same Bayer and all these other same people are using exactly the same thing.
Yeah, interesting connection. I actually tend to think of it too, and from the perspective of so many ingredients are now sourced from other countries that have substandard approaches to doing things, and you find yourself in the supermarket buying something that's sourced from insert name of place that doesn't really matter, and you think, did they do it there okay? Because now I'm eating their food. Now their farmers are in charge of my health.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
but that's what I find. I'm totally privileged, and I also see so many people that have gone down this track on small blocks and they're dedicated to look after their little block because that's where they're getting their food from now.
Yeah, that's
okay,
nice.
And they've taken control, and so more and more we see the connection. I mean, this product that came out about the methane in the milk in the last week or two, people jumping up and down. We're not having that pile of shit in our food, and it just makes more and more sense to me to actually know where your food's coming from and how to stand behind it.
Yeah. You note that most Brookside consultants don't actively farm. Have you managed to balance both roles now?
As best I possibly can. Look, if I could not progress what we do without farming. Like, I'm there on the farm 2 or 3 times a week, over the weekends. Like yesterday, I was putting in water troughs and that. And that's all in education in the sense is like we're digging out the ground to put a water trough in. Oh, the soil's getting deeper. Oh, look at that. I mean, the other day when I was down to about 18 inches and I was just digging out chocolate cake, beautiful soils. And I'm going, shit, that was never like this before. So you just like, wow, that's different. And you understand, oh, well, I did this on this paddock and that paddock there, I dug the trough and, didn't do the same thing. What's going on, or is it just another year? Without that practical experience, I could not actually go and step onto other people's farms and say, this is what you're going to need to do if you want to actually make it like what we're doing at home. I just couldn't do it, actually. It would be selling stuff that,
Yeah, that's really hard. Actually, Brookside's lack of commercial ties appealed to you. Do you think it's even possible for other agricultural organisations to adopt that model at all?
Not if it's the organisation's built around selling a particular product.
Yeah.
Instead of an outcome.
Yeah, instead of an outcome. Yeah, that's really deep. Okay, so last question. After learning from Brookside, what were the biggest changes you implemented on your farm, and how did they shape its future?
Look, the biggest changes came about with just being able to go, what the hell is that going on? And I'd go and test it and I'd work it, and then you could fathom out what was going on. It was the ability to analyse the issues.
Yeah.
That was the biggest change. It's like, in all of my farming career, the ability to actually go and analyse stuff and go, oh, there it is there. It's right there. That was the big change. I don't know of any other farmers able to do that.
Yeah. Well, thanks for that, Ewan. Great. It was a great chapter. I'll see you on chapter 8.
Cool.
Follow along with your own hard copy of the book from efa.nz or listen to the audiobook on Spotify and Audible.